Hey guys, thanks for following Weekly Cannabis Update. We search the internet for cannabis-related news so that you don't have to. Okay, in this report, more about Doug Ford and the change he wants in Ontario. Are you curious about LP applicants who get denied? Well, we've got that data. And there's some more pot stock news for you, and a whole lot more. My name is Michael Peterson, and this is your Weekly Cannabis Update. For a couple of updates now, we mentioned Doug Ford, the new Ontario PC leader, pushing for a more open retail framework in the last Weekly Cannabis Update. Most people who are conscious of Ontario's 40-store plan and are keeping up to date on the legalization issue agree that it's an inferior plan compared to most other provinces. Well, Doug Ford is now using this issue as one of his main campaign tactics for the upcoming Ontario election, which will be held, incidentally, on or before June 7th. Ford says that he doesn't like monopolies and that cannabis sales need to be privatized. Kathleen Wynne, on the other hand, the Premier of Ontario, says that her government has taken a lot of time to come up with her plan, and what Doug Ford is suggesting would be reckless. Polls currently suggest that Doug Ford's PC party could win the upcoming elections. We'll see, and we'll keep you up to date on that too. An article published on MJ Biz Daily showed how many marijuana cultivation licenses were rejected in each province. BC and Ontario were the two highest by a country mile. That probably has a lot to do with population, thus higher numbers of applications. In total, there were 268 applications rejected in Canada, and BC accounted for 100 of them. Ontario actually has the highest number of legal producers currently in Canada, and they had 96 rejections. According to the article, the two biggest reasons for getting your LP application denied are bad security plans and poor standard operating procedures in the applications. Leafly.com published an article about cannabis strains. We covered a story in a previous update about cannabis not always being what it's claimed to be when looked at under a microscope, and this article started off by saying the same thing. The article actually said that, scientifically speaking, most weed strains are bullshit, and that was a quote they had. And the best way to describe cannabis is by referring to its THC or CBD content. Apparently, a big reason for the strains being inconsistent is because of mislabeling, sometimes unintentional, but sometimes intentional. Standardized procedures haven't been adopted by growers, and it's unknown whether labs are accurately measuring and reporting cannabinoid content. The article digs way deeper into the science behind growing and identifying cannabis strains, and it's a great read, so I recommend checking it out on Leafly. However, the moral of the story is that so long as guidelines aren't in place, you'll never really know what you're getting. Pot stock news for you. Apparently, the green organic Dutchman is about to do an IPO, which means you'll finally be able to invest in stocks with them. And that is getting a lot of investors excited. The anticipated share price at opening will be $3.65 per unit. If you compare that to many of the larger producers in Canada, it's actually still very affordable. So what's the big deal about green organic Dutchman Holdings? The company is licensed to grow medicinal cannabis. Okay. They have a capacity of 116,000 kilograms and is situated on 175 acres of land near the Ontario-Quebec border. According to the article, they're now building a 970,000 square foot facility, and to date, the company has raised around $160 million in capital, so they're already a big player in the game. If you want to find out more, just Google them and dive deep into the rabbit hole. If you invest in them, good luck. Now, here's kind of a silly story, but one that's no doubt getting enough press to mention it. We mentioned in a previous update how lots of people are disappointed with the name Ontario Cannabis Stores, and we're actually making fun of it and its oversimplified logo. The acronym for Ontario Cannabis Stores is OCS, and an article on cbc.ca went around to other Ontario organizations who also have the OCS acronym to ask how they felt about sharing the abbreviated name. First, the Ontario Crane Service said they weren't too happy about it, but said they couldn't afford to fight the government. They're worried about confusion, though, because they generally refer to themselves as the OCS. Next was the Ontario Council of Shooters. They said it didn't matter, but some people in the group may not like it. They're having their next meeting sometime in late spring, and they're sure it'll come up. Another was Oakville Christian School. They actually said that if many more people start to Google OCS, they'll start finding the school more often too, and it might bolster their online presence. I wouldn't have thought that a Christian school would be very happy about the association with the Ontario cannabis stores, but the person interviewed said that kids will think it's funny, and who knows, maybe they'll think it's cool too. It's all about perspective, I guess. The province of Saskatchewan has released a little more information about their cannabis retail plan, and like everyone else, they're going to match the legal drinking age with the legal age to buy and consume cannabis. The Liquor and Gaming Authority will oversee the retail framework, which is also like other provinces. Under their plan, anyone underage caught with more than 5 grams of cannabis will face tough criminal charges under their Youth Criminal Justice Act, and those who are between 18 and 19 will be sent to provincial court instead of youth court. The Saskatchewan Liquor and Gaming Authority has 51 retail permits that they'll give to applicants, and they expect to cover 32 communities with that number. The deadline, if you're interested, to submit an application in Saskatchewan is April 10th. Another article on the explosion of job opportunities in the marijuana industry. Now, we've covered this many times before, but I'll give you the latest summary of info based on an article on thewindsorstar.com. It starts off by saying that Aphria is now going to build another 200,000 square foot greenhouse in 2019 and expects to employ 400 more people. The OCS, and no, I don't mean the Ontario Christian School, is now advertising for full and part-time product specialists, in brackets, in government-run shops throughout the province. This is interesting. It's estimated that 30 to 40% of the jobs being created in the industry are entry-level or just above minimum wage. However, there's lots of prospective jobs with wages ranging anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000 per year and above. In the short term, companies like Aphria said that they should be able to find people trained in things like agriculture, food processing, and pharmaceuticals, but the concern is long-term. With growth, there's inevitably going to be a shortage of skilled workers, and thus, all the post-secondary institutions across the country are making room for cannabis-related studies, like we say in every update. An article on metronews.ca claimed that ATB Financial, which is an Alberta-based bank run by the province, has committed to lending $6.25 million to Atlas growers of Edmonton. What makes this interesting is that banks, for the most part in Canada, have steered clear of funding the cannabis industry. We mentioned in previous updates that there have been a few instances of money being lent to LPs by banks in Canada, but for the most part it's been minimal and not very publicized. With this commitment by ATB and private investors, Atlas will be able to produce about 80,000 kilograms of cannabis per year. Atlas will start growing by June and should have product on the market by September. When construction of the Atlas facility is complete, they claim it'll be bigger than the 800,000 square foot Aurora Sky facility near Edmonton International Airport, which is currently billed as the largest in the world. Incidentally, Atlas is not listed on the Health Canada website as a licensed grower yet, and I couldn't find any information about license status on their website, but maybe they're anticipating that it's coming down the pipe. I can't wait to find out if this happens, and we'll let you know as soon as information materializes. Thanks for listening to Weekly Cannabis Update. We search the internet for cannabis-related news so that you don't have to. If you have any questions or comments, or would like us to cover any stories, just email us at weeklycannabisupdate@gmail.com. And a quick shout out to My Podcast Pal. For help with your podcast, check out mypodcastpal.com. Thanks for listening, and please hit subscribe to this podcast to get your next Weekly Cannabis Update. Weekly Cannabis Update is a regularly published podcast. Our goal is to find cannabis-related news that interests you, summarize it, and retell the stories in a way that appeals to interested but busy people. We do our very best to remain as accurate as possible, but take no responsibility for inaccurate details or facts. If a story interests you, we're glad to have brought it to your attention, but take the time to research the details for yourself.